guys, welcome back to the Turnbuckle Tavern. Today we're going to do something that we haven't done before. It's a new segment that we have where the Turnbuckle Tavern takes it back. And before we get into the meat of what we're talking about today, before we talk about anything, make sure you guys go down, hit the subscribe button, click the bell, get our notifications when we send you guys out new videos, and follow the link to our Instagram, our Twitter, our Pro Wrestling Tees store. Follow us on Apple and Spotify. Listen to the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. And I think that's it. I think that's all you can do. It's a lot of information.
That's it.
But today we're going to be talking about ECW One Night Stand 2006. And we're going to take it back to that. And we were there.
We were there live. This was the second ECW One Night Stand. They had their first one in 2005. It was a monumental event. And so they decided to do it again. And this kind of correlated with them announcing they had struck up a deal with the Sci-Fi Network and they were going to be doing an ECW weekly television show. This ECW One Night Stand in 2006 took place at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. That's at the Manhattan Center. And it took place 2 days before Sci-Fi debuted their ECW show.
Yep. Yeah. And, a little bit of backstory from a couple of people who were there. I remember there's a famous story about us going where you forgot your ticket, but
yeah,
we had worked for Tower Records and we were lucky enough to get tickets because we had a Ticketmaster outlet at the store.
Right.
And so we kind of had first dibs on getting tickets because it sold out instantly.
Yeah.
The thing sold out as soon as they went on sale. And we had a couple of our buddies, Nate and Bean, who were our wrestling compadres. We were the Four Horsemen together.
Yeah, we went to a ton of like Monday Night Raws at the Garden. Yeah. I believe we even went to a Monday Night Raw that was on 9/11 in New York City at the Garden. So we had to get tickets, and Mike Bean, rest in peace. He unfortunately passed away, but one of our best friends in New York, and I would argue that he was one of the most knowledgeable wrestling fans that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting.
Oh, for sure. Hands down. Between, to meet a couple of people like Nate and Bean and be able to share that passion of professional wrestling with a couple of people who are they were just like us. They were like city versions of us.
Yeah, and they were a few years older than us, so they had a little more knowledge of the earlier wrestling than we did.
Yeah.
And, we were just two guys from West Virginia who moved to New York City, and to meet our New York City equivalents. And, these guys, I believe Bean lived in the Bronx, South Bronx, and
I know Nate was in Far Rockaway.
Yeah, Nate was in Far Rock, so cultures colliding, but we kind of came together through our love of professional wrestling.
Bonded over pro wrestling and burgers and food, and we had a blast with them, man. And we had a blast that night too. And I know we had met you that night at the Hammerstein Ballroom, and I believe we had worked that day and you were off and you met us and everything went off without a hitch that night, right?
No, not at all. So we were probably, I'd say, about 15 to 20 people back from entering the Hammerstein Ballroom for the show, and I realized that I had forgotten my ticket. Now, at the time, we were living in Weehawken, New Jersey, which is just outside the Lincoln Tunnel. You go to Port Authority around Times Square, you take a bus, you go to Weehawken. It's usually like a 30 to 40 minute little trip.
Yeah. around that round trip, probably. Yeah. 30,
Yeah,
40 minutes.
just waiting for the bus, getting
Right.
on the bus, taking it, So I get up there and I realize I don't have my ticket. It's one of those situations where I was just racking my brain. Like, okay, is there any way I can tell them I have a ticket and they can pull it up and scan me? And at that time, that wasn't really an option. You had to have your hard copy ticket.
Yeah. We had no smartphones then.
Yeah, 2006, still had
There
flip
was no
phones.
app. There was no app for this.
Yeah, there was no ticket app. There was nothing like that. So I just had the realization, like, if I want to get in, I have to make the round trip. And I didn't want to do it, but it just hits you like, well, this is something you have to do. So I had to haul my ass down to Port Authority, catch a bus, go over to Weehawken, go to the apartment, get the ticket, come back out, wait for a bus to arrive, catch another bus back into Times Square, then hoof it down to the Manhattan Center. So I did that, and we got into the show. And the first thing I remember when entering was just the fans were fired the fuck up.
Oh, it was crazy. The the fandom in that building. If you were in that building, you were a true pro wrestling fan.
Yeah, and you could feel the energy of these fans were ready to raise hell. Like they were, there was almost a defiance in this crowd of WWE's putting on this product. We're going to show them what what the ECW fan base is really like.
Yeah.
And it was no holds barred. It was uncensored. It was just chaos.
Well, at the time, nobody hated John Cena except everybody in this building hated John Cena. And it was kind of, at the time, unprecedented to see that type of pushback on him. And when I remember walking in and seeing a huge sheet, I mean, maybe it wasn't as big as what it is in my mind now, but it looked so huge to me. And it said, "If Cena wins, we riot."
Yeah, it was from the second level. They had hung it over the side in the main area off the balcony, where I remember watching it back on the network, and that sign is prevalent, plain as day. Big white bed sheet. If Cena wins, we riot. And that wasn't just a threat.
No.
If Cena would have won that night, because he was the main event against Rob Van Dam for the WWE Championship, if he would have won, that place would have went crazy.
Oh, it would have been insane. It would have been insane. The rabid fans in there would have torn that ballroom apart.
Yeah, and what's maybe some of the matches that really pop in your brain when you think of that night ECW One Night Stand?
Well, the first match that happened was, to me, because I was always a fan of Taz, and to see him wrestle, because I never seen him wrestle before.
Right.
I'd never seen him in a match, and it wasn't a quick match, obviously, but he came in and just, I believe he put Lawler to, it was him and Lawler.
Yeah,
and
he put him in the Taz mission.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
I think it was like 30, 40 seconds done.
Yeah, it was quick. I know it was quick. And another match, I mean, obviously the Van Dam Cena match is going to stand out. That goes without saying. But
yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, the other one that stood out to me was the hardcore match with Edge and the table and the fire and everything.
Yeah, that match, it was Edge, Lita, and Mick Foley.
Yep.
Against Beulah McGillicuddy, Terry Funk, and Tommy Dreamer.
Yep.
And so it was kind of WWE versus the heart and soul of ECW, because even when Mick Foley was in ECW, he kind of came in as a heel in ECW.
Right.
And Terry Funk was always kind of the godfather of ECW, the man you can't kill, or the man that'll never die, and that match, I think they had a flaming bat at one point in it, and Mick
Yeah.
Foley's shirt got caught on fire, and one of the ringside officials had to put his shirt out. Like,
Well, what I remember was, if I'm not mistaken, Terry Funk got thrown into a ton of barbed wire and
yeah,
had to be like cut out of it. He like couldn't get out of it.
yeah, I remember that. He was pretty much hung up in barbed wire. Like, barbed wire played a big part. They had the barbed wire board. They had a barbed wire bat. It was a classic ECW hardcore match.
And it was, you said it was Beulah, right?
Beulah, yeah.
And I remember one thing I remember is some of the chants that the crowd had going, because it wasn't your normal wrestling chant.
No, I think there was a "You're a crack whore" chant for Beulah.
Yeah, I remember it was something like that, and I just remember like those chants. I just felt like I was watching something special happen.
Oh yeah, they were chanting "You're a crack whore." She's got herpes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
She's got herpes.
Yeah, and it was completely uncensored. If you watch it, it's like an ECW pay-per-view. They didn't bleep stuff. They kind of let it ride and kept that ECW spirit, because I think that was the big thing I've read when they initially set out to do ECW One Night Stand the year prior, when that idea was floated. I think Heyman was kind of against it, because he was like, being produced by WWE, it'll never have that energy. So they assured him that they would let it go uncensored, and
As it should have been.
I remember that the Edge, Mick Foley, Tommy Dreamer, Terry Funk match vividly. I remember the promo that JBL cut from one of the balcony boxes.
Yeah.
Where he just laid into the crowd. He talked about beating the shit out of the Blue Meanie. He was obviously at the time doing the "I'm a wrestling god,"
which the Blue Meanie stuff was a shoot, right?
Oh yeah, that was a shoot where I guess there was back and forth with them, and pretty much JBL beat the hell out of him one night, and it was a big deal. I think they squashed it after that, but he really laid into the Blue Meanie.
Yeah, it was. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull up the results of just to make sure there's. Oh, okay. So there are a couple things here. So the first thing, Taz and Jerry Lawler, which we talked about quick. It says 35 seconds is what it was.
Right.
And then Kurt Angle and Randy Orton had a match.
Yeah, and Randy Orton, they hated him. They were chanting "boring," and
yeah,
I remember they kind of got behind Kurt. Like, the ECW fans even though Kurt had never been in ECW, the fans of ECW had a respect for Kurt.
Yeah.
And they kind of, that's the guy they got behind in that match.
Yeah, and who won that match? It's
Kurt defeated him by submission. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then we had FBI, Little Guido and Tony Mama Luke with Big Guido, and they defeated Super Crazy and Tajiri in a tag team match.
That was a good match.
Rey Mysterio versus Sabu. What a crazy match, man.
Oh,
what a crazy pairing of people.
Yeah, they kayfabed ended it, said the match couldn't continue, but it wasn't. It was kayfabed, but it ended in a no contest, and I think it was an Extreme Rules match for the World Heavyweight Championship, but they ended up ending it in a no contest, but that was crazy.
Yeah, and the ending of the Edge match too, did he not, was it the ending? I mean, I believe, didn't he spear Beulah?
Oh yeah. Edge ended up spearing McGillicuddy, Beulah, and pinned her with a cover that kind of resembled the legs up version of the missionary position.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then ECW original Balls Mahoney.
Oh yeah. He came out and said he was, what did he say? He was like, he reminded fans that he was Eric Bischoff's nephew. I guess that was a thing that was a running gag.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that part of
Yeah.
it. That's hilarious. Yeah, he
And I think he was interrupted by the Sandman.
okay. Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, because before it was one of those things where Mahoney won the match and like hit Tanaka with a steel chair, and then Eugene, remember? Eugene came out to cut a promo. And I'm getting shit mixed up. Balls Mahoney didn't remind people that he was Eric Bischoff's nephew. Eugene came out and reminded people that he was Eric Bischoff's nephew. That's right. And then Eugene was interrupted by Sandman, and Sandman came out, classic entrance, Enter Sandman, and then he caned Eugene. Yeah.
Oh man, that's hilarious, man. And Balls Mahoney, that guy, he had been in WWF. Well, at the time, WWF before. He had a little stint as Santa Claus.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe, and I have a Santa Claus pin somewhere.
Oh, really?
Here. Yeah, yeah, of his little run where he was basically an enhancement talent, and yeah, that guy. We lost Balls a few years ago.
Yeah, Balls was. I mean, if you listen to any podcast, any wrestling podcast with Tommy Dreamer or Bubba Ray, they have iconic stories with Balls Mahoney, just how crazy he was. And
yeah.
But the big match of the night was the Cena Rob Van Dam match.
Right.
And you know, you were talking about chants throughout the night. You know, there was "fuck you Cena" chants, there was "same old shit" chants, "overrated," "you can't wrestle,"
I've seen enough.
I've seen enough. All of these chants, and just in unison, every person in the Hammerstein Ballroom was chanting this stuff.
Well, and also we saw him throw his shirt out to the crowd, and it got returned every single time he threw it out.
Yeah, that went on and on. He kept trying to throw his shirt out because at the time you'd take his shirt off, throw it out to the crowd would take it. ECW kept throwing it back in, and finally he just stopped because the fans were not going to accept this T-shirt.
Right. Yeah, and unprecedented at that time for him to deal with that from fans.
Right.
I loved it. It was great. And I mean, he lost.
Yeah, he ended up losing to Rob Van Dam.
Lost the belt. Yeah.
And that pleased the crowd. The crowd loved that. And
oh yeah, they they loved it. I mean, I think if they had ever had the plan of Cena winning that night, that was probably changed after they saw that crowd.
Oh yeah.
If they ever, which they probably didn't, but I believe that crowd was enough to change plans, or they would have had a massive incident on their hands.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I don't think that crowd would have let it go.
Absolutely not. They would have rioted for sure, just like the sign said.
Yeah.
The one thing I do remember about this match, or not this match, but this night that we hadn't talked about, was the speech that Paul Heyman gave at the top of the show. When the show first kicked off, Paul came out. You know, he had his black trench coat on, his hat. He was in full ECW mode, and he came out and he gave this like almost a rallying cry to work this crowd into a frenzy.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, you know, this, you know, ECW coming back, it didn't happen because of me, and it didn't happen because of Vince McMahon, but this happened because of you. And he kind of spun and pointed his finger at all the fans, and him saying, on behalf of every single one of us, you know, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
You can just tell that, you know, Heyman, you know, there's been stories of him not checks bouncing and him being a little not organized with the product when it was in full swing, and how he was kind of doing backroom deals with WWE, and Vince was pretty much paying for ECW to stay afloat at a certain point. And none of the talent in ECW knew this, but at the core, you know, this was Paul's baby, and Paul Heyman was kind of the heart and soul behind this thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I don't think there's anybody that could work a crowd before an event and give a promo like him.
No, I even think back to the documentary that came out, Behind the Mat or Beyond the Mat.
Yeah, on the mat when Terry Funk was there.
Yeah, and there's that backroom speech that you see Paul giving the ECW crowd before an event, and he's just whipping those wrestlers into a frenzy, pretty much.
The backstage where he's talking to the wrestlers.
Yeah, the backstage where he's talking to the wrestlers. It was,
this is the dance.
Yeah, it's one of the most iconic speeches.
Yeah. And I mean, for us to have been there and to be able to witness something like that, I mean, that's as a wrestling fan, I'm glad that I can tuck that in my pocket as something that I had been to.
Yeah, there's several events in the past that kind of stand out for me as those landmark events as a wrestling fan that you get to attend. You know, one of them is being able to watch a WWE Raw at the Garden. That's a monumental moment. Being able to go and see the first ever AEW event, Double or Nothing in Vegas. That was a monumental moment.
Yep.
I even think back to being a little kid and seeing house shows of early 90s WCW when the Dangerous Alliance and Stinger Squadron were having cage matches. You know, I think of the first pay-per-view we ever attended. WCW Sold Out in Charleston, West Virginia. That was a big moment.
I have the match card up on the wall here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously seeing ECW in the Hammerstein Ballroom, that was a big moment. So just stuff like that sticks with you, and it's kind of a feather in your cap as a fan to have some of those landmark events in your belt.
Yeah, and the night couldn't have ended any better. I believe we got a little White Castle before going home.
Yeah, that was always the tradition with Nate and Bean. We'd go to wrestling and then hit up the White Castle by the Garden.
Yep, there was one right on 34th Street.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, that's all I have for that event. Do you have anything else you want to add before we head out?
No, that's it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for taking it back with us. Kind of letting us go down our memory lane. If you guys have any suggestions for events that you'd like us to cover, I mean, we'll cover it. We don't have to have been there to do it. We want to cover anything. If you guys have any stories, you know, let us tell your story about the event that you went to.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll be back at you with some more Taking It Back.